The movie starts in 1947 in the New Mexico desert, where a radio operator picks up a strange signal that causes his dog to bark uncontrollably. Intrigued, the man connects more equipment, but still can't decipher the noise. He contacts another station, which informs him that the signal is coming from Roswell. Taking his dog and the radio with him, he drives off toward the source. In the distance, he sees smoke and a strange light. Suddenly, his truck loses power, and the dog leaps out, barking furiously. The operator follows the dog and comes upon a fiery scene, with something odd at the center. As he hears a noise and looks up, he's blinded by a bright light and panics. Fast forward to Antarctica in 2003, where a group of scientists detects an unusual object buried 5 meters beneath the ice using a scanner. Unsure what to make of it, they send the object to a NASA research station for further study. Meanwhile, at the University of California, cryptologist Julian is teaching a class while a flirtatious student tries to distract him. Ignoring her advances, Julian shuts his laptop after receiving a provocative email from her. After class, Julian meets with Dr. Bachman, who has received satellite images of the strange Antarctic discovery. Initially thought to be a fossilized whale, it turns out the object is emitting a mysterious radio signal. Dr. Bachman hands Julian a CD containing the signal for him to analyze. Obsessed with the signal, Julian quickly realizes it contains structured patterns, not random noise. He runs the data through specialized software and finds the signal has a frequency stronger than anything known on Earth. Excited by his findings, Julian convinces Dr. Bachman to secure him a spot on the research team investigating the object. Meanwhile, on the Falkland Islands, 2 scientists also come across the strange signal. Unable to decode it, they send it to an observatory in Arizona, where another team detects an amplification of the signal and forwards it to NASA. Days later, Julian arrives in Antarctica. His flight faces turbulence from a violent storm, and visibility is low as the plane struggles to land. Fortunately, the bright lights of the base guide the pilots to a safe landing. After a tense moment, the plane slides but stops without incident. At the base, Julian is greeted by Nyla, who gives him a tour and introduces him to Dr. Jirak, the head of the operation. Julian is then taken to the site where the object is stored. Though mostly unearthed, it remains encased in ice. Following protocol, the team is letting it thaw naturally, though they've noticed it's melting at an unusual rate. Both Jirak and Julian suspect the object might be extraterrestrial. As Julian examines it more closely and touches the ice, a strange energy surges up his arm, causing him to relive memories from the past few days. When he pulls his hand away, his skin is red and irritated. Just then, Dr. Kate, who happens to be his ex, finds him. Though she doubts his ability to avoid trouble, she asks him to behave since the project is important to her. That night, Julian dreams of something glowing within the ice. He's jolted awake by a strange noise and leaves his room to investigate, noticing a shadow moving around and water pooling on the floor. As he follows the trail, he senses a presence behind him, and when he turns, the same mysterious energy shows him visions of the universe, the 1947 New Mexico incident, and strange alien creatures. When Julian wakes again, he's uncertain whether it was a dream or reality. The next morning, Nyla shows Julian their genetically engineered corn, which is growing successfully in the warm conditions of an Antarctic greenhouse. As they walk through the field, Julian can't help but notice Kate's closeness with Straub, making him feel jealous. Meanwhile, a government agent and the Secretary of Defense are reviewing the profiles of Julian, Jirak, and Bachman. They uncover that Julian was once involved with a student, which led to him leaving teaching to work for NASA. That student was none other than Kate. They also examine the signal NASA sent them and realize it's identical to one detected in 1947 back at the base. Julian spends his time studying the signal, though progress is slow. Communications Officer Grisham joins him and shares how he initially discovered the signal coming from the ice. Later, during lunch, Julian meets the rest of the crew, but Straub mocks him for his belief in aliens. After lunch, the crew experiences a communications blackout, a frequent occurrence during storms. Julian checks on the object and is surprised by how much ice is melted, revealing more of the object beneath. Nyla remarks that she feels a faint pulse in her joints as she approaches the ice, and when she tries to touch it, Julian warns her against it. Julian realizes the signal has changed. There are now multiple frequencies combining in one, unlike the original signal Grisham found. Unable to access the satellite, Julian persuades Grisham to help him rig an antenna, allowing him to continue analyzing the signal through his computer. The next morning, the base shakes violently and the mysterious object falls from its hangars. The crew rushes to inspect it and finally sees the object, now mostly free of ice. It's unlike anything they've ever encountered. When Kate touches it, she receives an electric shock. After examining the object, the team concludes it's made of igneous rock, indicating it could be a meteorite. However, Julian notices that the signal is similar to aircraft retrieval data, leading him to believe the object is actually a black box from a crashed spacecraft, sending out a distress signal. Excited by his theory, Julian rushes back to his computer, combining his findings with math to decipher part of the message. Despite making progress, the message is still unclear, and Straub mocks him for it. The group takes a snack break, and Straub insists the idea of aliens is crazy, but everyone else agrees with Julian's theory. At that moment, they're called back to the maintenance bay because a crew member has found a crease on the object. The team discusses the idea of opening it, and Kate worries about potential virus or other pathogenic organisms, but Straub points out the labs are sealed environments, and they all agree to open it in the morning. Meanwhile, Bachman is called to the White House to discuss some terrible news regarding the mysterious object. Contacting the base is still impossible because of the weather, but the government has already allied with a Russian submarine and sent it toward the base with nuclear warheads ready to launch. The next morning, the team connects the object to one of their machines using cables and provokes an electrical reaction that neutralizes the shocks. The object is still generating current inside, but now they can touch it without getting hurt. Then they use a saw to start cutting the object open, finding a softer layer under the tough outside. Jirac takes a piece from the object and confirms it's some carbon alloy that was exposed to extreme heat. On Julian's computer, the message keeps changing, and he tells Nyla the object is trying to communicate. When Nyla says it's like the video game Mind Maze, it gives him an idea on how to tackle the message, and after some trial and error, he finally manages to translate it. It says, "Do not open." Julian and Nyla freak out and run to the maintenance bay, but when they get there, it's too late. A glowing energy is coming out of the object and making the saw man scream in pain. His body starts melting, and soon an explosion happens, hurting multiple crew members and destroying most objects in the room. It also brings down the generator, which shuts power down in the base until the emergency batteries take over. After getting some flashlights, the rest of the group goes down to the bay to check on the wounded employees. Everyone is alive except for the sawing guy, who is burned to death. When they take a closer look at the hole the saw left in the object, they're surprised to discover weirdly looking organic parts. Pilot Tony pokes it with a broom handle, and the membrane starts burning away until a new hole reveals what's truly inside the object, a frozen alien. They can't tell if it's just sleeping or actually dead. Suddenly, Nyla says she feels sick as her nose starts bleeding. She falls on her knees, and her face begins melting as well. Soon more and more employees start going through the same, making the group realize there's some kind of virus that escaped from the object and is now in the air, killing them one by one. Horrified, the few survivors run into a sealed room to be safe and watch the alien on the security cameras. Grisham tries to contact someone for help, but the comms are still down. Jirac explains a disease sometimes slows down to avoid killing the thing it needs to live on, so there's a chance the survivors may be infected as well. While the group fights over what to do, the alien opens its eyes. By the time the crew looks at the screen again, the creature is gone from the bay. They agree to go looking for it and to get the guns brought by the pilots. Using just their flashlights, the crew starts searching the maintenance bay. Straub gets scared when he feels something at his back, but it's just Kate. Grisham is also searching, unaware something is watching him from afar. It goes away when Grisham turns around with his flashlight. The presence then starts following Tony, who screams when he sees something moving in the shadows. As Julian tries to climb over some boxes to reach the next base level, Kate turns off the power in the rooms they aren't using, and Julian falls. He recovers quickly and begins following a weird noise until he finally finds the alien, who appears to be scared. Julian puts down his flashlight while using gentle words, trying to prove he's friendly. The alien slowly comes out and puts its claws near the flashlight, absorbing its energy until it's off. Then the alien approaches Julian and carefully grabs his head with both hands, sharing the energy. When the alien opens its eyes, Julian begins having beautiful visions of the rest of the universe. At that moment, the others show up and Traub tells Tony to fire his gun. The bullet hits the alien, and from the resulting wound, a strong energy beam comes out, knocking down Tony and Grisham when they try to come closer. Once all the energy has been expelled, the alien falls and dies, causing its body to disintegrate to the point of disappearing. Tony explains he thought the alien wanted to kill Julian, but he disagrees, saying the alien's touch felt safe. It didn't change into fear until Tony showed up. At that moment, the White House finally finds a hole in the storm and gets in contact with the base. Bachman explains they know about the alien and the infection, so Julian assures him this illness hasn't left the base. Then Bachman also tells them about the New Mexico incident and the killing pathogen which the aliens are immune to. These creatures communicate with each other through telepathy and have already killed everything on Mars. When Julian announces the alien is dead, the Secretary of Defense decides blowing up the base is the only option. They have to get rid of the virus. He wants Bachman to lie to the crew and tell them help is coming, but Bachman refuses and only tells them a Russian submarine is on its way. Julian reads between lines and asks how many hours they have, to which Bachman responds 3. After the conversation ends, Straub freaks out and says he wants to leave on the plane even if the storm is bad. Julian reminds him they're infected and leaving means taking the virus to the outside world, but Straub thinks that if they were actually infected, they'd already be dead. As the submarine comes closer, the scientists run some blood tests to confirm they aren't infected, although Julian points out this new virus could be insignificantly tiny and hiding in the protein. Straub sees this as a signal to leave and Tony supports him, but the others don't. Kate's lack of support makes Straub mad, and he insults her as he tries to attack her. But Julian moves faster and knocks him down with a punch. Suspecting that Straub and Tony will try to leave anyway, the others take Tony's gun and go around changing the passwords on the locks. In the Russian submarine, they get ready to shoot the nukes in 18 minutes. At the base, Kate and Julian finish changing the last lock and hold hands to comfort each other, only to be startled by the sound of gunfire. In the mess hall, Straub and Tony have overpowered Grisham, stabbing him in the neck with a fork. During the struggle, the gun fires wildly, sending bullets into the walls, ceiling, and striking Jirak in the shoulder. Once Grisham loses consciousness, Straub and Tony grab the gun and make a run for it just as Julian and Kate return. Straub shoots again, this time hitting Kate in the shoulder. Realizing that Straub and Tony are headed for the cornfield to escape through the drain pipes, Jirak sends Julian after them. Straub and Tony blast through the locked doors, making it to the cornfield. As they run, their presence kills the corn plants, confirming their infection. Tony begins to have second thoughts about escaping, but Straub, determined to flee, threatens him with the GU and AT. That moment, Julian appears at a nearby window and Straub fires at him. Julian manages to duck just in time, and Tony uses the distraction to attack Straub. A fierce struggle ensues for control of the gun, but Straub ultimately overpowers Tony and shoots him. As Julian gets closer, Straub flees, leaving a trail of dead plants in his wake. He continues firing at Julian, but misses every shot. Both men reach the pipes and scramble through them, emerging at a huge staircase. The chase intensifies as they ascend the stairs, with Straub continuously firing at Julian to no avail. When Straub reaches a hatch at the top, he rushes outside, only to be confronted by a swirling vortex of energy that traps him. Julian follows but is stopped by an invisible barrier. He tries to calm Straub, urging him to breathe slowly, but Straub, unable to breathe, panics. The energy gradually envelopes Straub, disintegrating him until nothing remains. As the energy begins to surround Julian, it reveals visions of distant places in the universe and an imminent nuclear strike. Julian realizes the vortex is an alien spaceship sent to retrieve the now-deceased alien. He rushes back inside to save the remaining survivors, Kate, Jirak, and a young scientist. He opens the front door, urging them to follow. Initially hesitant, they understand the situation when they see two aliens within the vortex. The young scientist and Jirak go ahead, followed by Kate and Julian, who hold hands as they step into the vortex. The spaceship absorbs all 4 of them and takes off just moments before the nuclear missile strikes the base, obliterating it. Hours later, the government covers up the incident, claiming the base was destroyed by an experimental nuclear reactor, honoring the dead as fallen heroes. Meanwhile, the 4 survivors are now soaring through space aboard the alien ship, embarking on an unknown journey. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more videos.